Amy has just logged in, and I'm going to give her, she has co-host.
Yay!
Yeah. So Amy, whenever you want to jump on video, we're ready for you. And audio. Hey, Amy, how are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Awesome, awesome. So Amy's our first guest for today, and she is from Chattanooga, and she is the author of Corpsewood Manor Murders in North Georgia, as well as the founder of the Ghost Tour in Chattanooga. So Amy, it's awesome that you came to visit and talk. This is actually our 1-year anniversary for our podcast.
Congratulations.
And, thank you. And I wanted you to be a part of it. I was walking down the street in West Village, and I guess it was about a week ago, and I saw a group of people. A lady with dark hair had a black hat on with a red band around the hat, and I saw her talking to this group of people about the history of Chattanooga. And so I did a little diving into it and started looking at some of the ghost tours, and I stumbled upon your profile and started reading some of the stuff that you've done. And I found it super fascinating. And all these people here are all cybersecurity professionals. And, I wanted something to kind of reflect the haunted theme and to reflect the time of year that we started this podcast. So why don't you tell us about your background, what it took to write that book, which I started reading, by the way, is really fascinating. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, I actually practiced law for 20 years. This is the ghost tour is my retirement job. It's much more fun. And I first started hearing about the Corpsewood case when I started practicing, because it actually made international news when it happened, and it still has a huge cult following. And then when I started the ghost tours, I started hearing about it from an entirely different angle. So it was the perfect book to write.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was reading in a book that the doctor who moved to that area, that him and his partner actually built that castle or that home. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, well, neither he nor Joey, who moved with him, had any construction experience whatsoever. They read a book on how to build, and decided, to build themselves a little castle in the middle of the forest. And I've heard some speculation that the reason that it doesn't have corners, that it's rounded, doesn't have anything to do with, keeping evil spirits away or anything, that it was actually just an error as a result of the construction and experience. But either way, it turned out beautiful. So
yeah, it was pretty big. I was looking at the pictures online.
It's 700 square feet per floor. It's 2 stories. So it was someplace between 1,400 and 1,600 feet, but it was enough for what they needed.
Yeah, and from what I understand too, both of them kind of delved into the macabre and kind of at one point, I think I read that they were Satanists or something, and that's where
Charles did. Now, I've heard from Joey's family that he did not, but Charles was very interested. Well, he was a brilliant man, and he was fascinated with all kinds of different things. And one of the things that he came across, and I guess became fascinated with, was the Church of Satan, which is not the same as devil worshippers. I've had to explain many times, especially down here in the South, that not the same thing. But they don't even believe in the devil or God. They're basically atheists, and the name has to do with sort of poking fun at Christians. But yeah, that was he was a member of the Church of Satan, and so that's part of why there's some suspicion that it was a group of ministers that actually wound up burning the house after they were murdered. So
wow. So tell me about the murders. How were they found, and what kind of went down in that whole situation?
Okay. Well, Charles was an extremely outgoing, extrovert kind of fella. Whenever anybody came by, and lots of people came by, because who wouldn't? Like I said, when you have a little castle in the middle of the national forest, everyone's a little fascinated. When you're driving a Jeep in town that has huge inverted pentagrams on the side, and people heard all kinds of rumors. So a lot of people stopped by, some of them to be friendly, some of them with not such good intent. But he had an amazing way with people. He's very persuasive, and always managed, for the ones who were not friendly, to talk them down or whatever. And he'd always invite people to come up to the pink room. He didn't invite very many folks inside the castle, certainly no strangers, but up to the pink room, have a drink or whatever. And so one day, Kenneth Avery Brock, who was 17 at the time, had been hunting in the woods and ran across, Dr. Scudder, and he invited him up there, and they wound up drinking and I think having, some sexual relations. Brock went home and told his roommate, Brock had never been in trouble before. His roommate, Tony West, was bad news. He had starting at the young age of about, I think it was 12, shot and killed his nephew, and his career just went on from there. He later shot his uncle, didn't kill him, had been in all kinds of trouble with the law. But when Kenneth was telling him about it, Tony made fun of him because of the sex, which of course made Kenneth mad. And so he turned around and was bragging about, it's really these guys' fault, even though, Kenneth, he may have been 17, but he wasn't, he was emancipated. He'd been on his own for quite a while. His dad had kicked him out before. So he was not like an innocent, high school student or whatever. It was a consensual relationship. But when Tony started making fun of him, like I said, he got furious and decided it was all these guys' faults and he was going to punish them for it. And he came up with some really terrible plans. He wanted to rape them with a hot soldering iron. Of course, they didn't have electricity and they didn't have a soldering iron because they didn't have electricity. And for some reason, these guys thought they could find a soldering iron there when they went. So that didn't ever happen, thank goodness. But Tony didn't care. He just wanted to rob them. They figured, here's these two guys that don't work, living in the middle of the national forest, with no apparent means of support. So they must be rich. So they assumed there was, a lot of money there. They were disappointed about that. But that's how it came about.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So post the murders, have you been to that, what's remaining of the castle? I saw that there was just like very few remnants of the dwelling.
Yeah, I went out there maybe 3 times, I think, a couple times taking pictures and then one time just to visit. And yeah, every time there's, more deterioration. I haven't been since probably around 2018, 2019, something like that. And when I heard from somebody actually just about a week ago that all that's remaining right now is just one of the outbuildings, that everything else is pretty much torn down. When I've been before, the gazebo at the front of it was still there, and there's still some there were remnants of walls and a couple of the outbuildings, but my understanding is there's just the one outbuilding left. At least that's what they told me last week.
Yeah. So do you get strange vibes when you go out there? Do you think there's any kind of activity out there?
I think maybe they're still watching over the place, but I think it's a really peaceful place. I don't think that was always the case. I think there used to be something bad out there. I think it's been gone for, a couple of decades. But you said you're just now reading the book. You hadn't got to the end of it, right?
No.
Okay. So can I give you a little spoiler?
Yeah, absolutely.
After I finished the book, and this is one of the things, all kinds of weird stuff happened while I was writing this book. It was incredible, but this one probably takes the cake. After I was done with my first draft, I mailed it in to the publisher or whatever, and so of course I'm all knotted up because I've been sitting at a computer for months. And I went in to get a massage, and I'm talking to this guy's young guy who's doing it. And I said, I just finished a book, and he was asking what it was about. And I told him, it was about these, 2 gay men who'd gotten, murdered in the woods, and he said, did that happen a long time ago? And I said, yeah, and he said, up around Chattanooga County. Yeah. And he told me that when he was in high school, and this was a big thing with high schoolers, they would go out there, and drink or party or whatever. When he was in high school, he had gone out with some of his buddies to Corpsewood, and he said it was really weird. Now, to get to this place, you have to go to the road runs out, and then you have to go a mile down a dirt road, and you have to find the right turn, and then you have to find the right pull off, and then you have to hike half a mile through the woods. It is not easy to find.
Wow.
But at the pull off where you have to park, there's only room for 1 or maybe 2 small cars. There's no way you can miss any car that's out there. So anyway, they said they got there, nobody there, so they, went on out to the woods, and they came to where the ruins were, and they said, here's these 2, odd sort of guys, sort of raggedy, whatever, set up in lawn chairs in the middle of the right where the living room, like kitchen sort of area had been before, not kitchen, where the dining room area had been before.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, they were talking about what had happened, back before, and that they said they came there every year on the same day. They were kind of disturbed about some noise of some truck running up and down the road. So anyway, the guy, they told him about the murders, I think, a little bit. And then this guy and his buddies went and explored the woods. When they came back, there was nobody there. But how they even got there in the first place, because this is not someplace you would usually walk all the way to, right? Since there wasn't a car there. Well, anyway, this just sounded a little too familiar. And so I asked him, I said, was this in December? He said he didn't know that it was cold out, though. He knew that. And I said, was one of the guys big and one of the guys little? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, what color hair did they have? And he said, well, the little one had blonde hair and the bigger one had dark hair. And I happened to have a picture out in my car, which I thought at the time was Charles and Joey. It turned out it wasn't Joey. It was another man who was there. But I brought the picture in and showed it to him because, like I said, it just sounded all too familiar. And the guy's jaw just dropped. And he said, I don't know who that dark-haired guy is. He says, but this one right here, the blonde guy, he said, that's who we saw. And what really made me believe that is he didn't know he was telling a ghost story. He thought he was just telling me about a couple of weird guys in the middle of the woods. So, I think they're still hanging out and visiting at least once a year, apparently.
That's pretty awesome.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So one of the things that drew me to Chattanooga and drew me downtown was the buildings and the architecture. Mm-hmm. And one of the very first places I went to, I was staying at the Moxie. Decided I wanted to go get a Starbucks. And the first place that I could find Starbucks that was close to the Moxie was the Reed House. Mm-hmm. And so I did a little research on the Reed House while I was sitting down there and realized that in room 311, there was a ghost supposedly, and an Al Capone was actually kept there right before he went on trial. So I know that's part of the tour. Have you had any experiences in 311 or?
Well, we've never gone into 311 as part of the tour. Now, before COVID, we went into the Reed House down to the an area off the lobby where there's a painting where we got a really cool ghost photo before. Since COVID's been going on, they haven't been letting groups come back in yet. So we tell the story outside. But I've been in there privately. My guides and I went in one night, it was right after we'd gotten an SLS X-Cam, which if you watch Ghost Adventures, that's the one where you can actually see the ghost on screen. Right. And it's the only time that we've ever gone in as a group into 311, not with any guest or whatever, just our group. They gave us permission that night to go in and check it out. And we got a video of a ghost that, it had already identified itself as Walter, which is not the main ghost of the Reed House. So Walter actually usually hangs out at Underground Chattanooga. We're quite familiar with him. He follows around one of my guides. So someone said, can you touch Hope? And it shows on the video, where he reaches out and touches her. And then they said, Hope says, Walter, can you show back up later on after it had disappeared? And it says, okay. And it shows up right next to her. So wow. That was really cool. Also, I went in there with my one of my current guides, Jessica. Some people attract a lot of things. Some people don't. I don't, which I really don't think it's fair because I own it. But there you go. A lot of my guides do, though. And Jessica's one of those. And I'd gone in there with her before. And they had told me that the main ghost in there, Annalisa Netherly, would answer questions, yes, no questions. And I totally did not believe that. But they said, no, it'll make a fan noise for yes and won't do anything for no, but apparently only for people that, sort of attract things. So I went in there with Jessica. Of course, it did nothing for me when I asked any questions. Just about every question Jessica answered, if it was one where yes was the appropriate answer, you'd hear it, because I think there's a fan up above the room or something like that making that. So that was another thing that we'd had happen in there. I've also had several guests from the Reed House call me before, at least one or two of which did not even know there was supposed to be a ghost in the hotel, saying, hey, have you ever heard anything about this place being haunted? Because that's some really weird stuff happened. So
It's a really cool place too. I went
It
through
is.
there
It's beautiful.
actually last night. I went through the back lobby to get to Starbucks, and yeah, it's a really beautiful hotel. One thing I didn't know, because I'm living in the McClellan on the sixth floor of the McClellan. During renovation, there was an incident where they had to stop the construction because they were working, I guess, on this building actually has 13 floors. The 13th floor is the attic. They're working on the 13th floor, and somebody dropped a 2x6 down to the ninth floor, and it hit this construction worker in the back of the head, in the back of the neck, and literally decapitated him, and he died. They had to bring him. At the time, they didn't have a stairwell that would fit a gurney, and they actually built that in after the renovation. But they had to go up and get this guy. And supposedly there's a ghost on the ninth floor that people see, like, doors opening and closing. But even a more peculiar one was the manager said that during renovation, she kept hearing, like, the front doors were padlocked shut, back doors were padlocked shut. And she was about to close up and leave, and she heard someone running upstairs on the second floor and giggling and making noises. And she said it sounded like a little boy. So she went up there, and I guess construction workers were coming down, and they said, she said, did you hear somebody? And they were like, oh yeah, it's no big deal. And she's like, well, we have to get everybody out of the building because I have to lock up. And they said, oh, he stays here. And I guess supposedly the construction workers had seen this little boy dressed in like probably 1930s outfit with leather boots and suspenders and shorts. And he is supposedly here in the building. But what was really cool about this building is I went downstairs just 2 nights ago with the manager, and they took me through all the extent of the underground underneath the McClellan building. And I have to say that it's really creepy down there. And I know nothing's happened in the basement, but it's still very creepy. And
well, of course, Underground Chattanooga is one of our stops on our tour that we talk about. So yeah, there's definitely some ghosts in Underground.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we went into this one part of the underground, this underneath Broad Street, and they were telling me a story about how the maintenance worker, there was a plastic like school chair sitting down there, and the maintenance worker would go in there and move stuff around, and he'd notice that the chair was in different positions every time he went in there during the day. So he decided to like put it in one spot and come back and see if it was still there. And he came back and it was like slid up against the wall. Well, when we were down in the underground, they took me to where that chair was supposedly sitting, and literally about the height of a young kid, there was scratches on the wall that like spelled out a word, spelled out help.
Oh my gosh. Spelled out what?
Help.
Help. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so the current maintenance worker refuses to go down there. He says, I can't, because I've seen stuff down there. He said, I've seen a big like dark shadow. And he said it really creeps him out. So then we went up to, I guess it was the 12th floor. No, we went to the attic first, 13th floor. And I don't know if the front of the building has a circular windows at the very top. So I got to look out of those windows, and it's actually the original window frames and glass and everything. And up there was some really interesting things where they had dug out underneath the floor because they had put stuff over where the boilers and stuff were at. And they said they found like women's shoes under there and all kinds of stuff. And then there's a chalk drawing from like probably the 1930s of a woman of that period. And it's still preserved. It's really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to go in there with you and check it out sometime. That would be really cool.
Come on over. I'll show you.
We'll bring our equipment. Yeah.
I have access to the whole building. They said I was going to do the podcast today up in the attic, but I wanted to wait until the sun went down to actually move the stuff up there. But the weirdest thing was we went down to the 12th floor, and there was a lawyer, an old lawyer. They said he's probably in his 70s or 80s, and he had left like really quick, left the building, left a bunch of stuff behind. He left these paintings. That one's by Henry Fuseli. It's called The Nightmare. And then that one is by Francisco Goya, called The Witch's Sabbath. And this is a lawyer, I guess a pretty prominent lawyer. He left those, and he left 100 canisters of film, like actual real film, that date back to like 1912. So we're all going to get like a projector and start going through the films and seeing what's actually on them. Because there's some of them that are, there's some of them that are really questionable.
Yeah, you sent
Yeah.
me screenshots of those paintings. Those are very interesting, and the one on the to your right, yeah, that one really creepy. It looks like they're doing child sacrifice or something in that one. And then the other one, the woman that looks dead. When you look at it close, it looks like a broken statue, which I thought was really. She's got lots of cracks all over her skin. It was really cool.
Yeah. So the one on the left has an incubus sitting on her chest, and then the horse in the background is a demon horse that the incubus rides on, supposedly.
Oh,
And
okay.
you were really close on the Francisco Goya. It's actually an initiation scene. And so the goat with the oak leaves and all that, the
Oh, the
witches,
Baphomet.
yeah, the witches are holding babies to be, I guess, presented to the goat. And then there's a couple like dead, I guess they're babies. I'm not really sure in the background. But
Yeah.
to see that, like a lawyer would have that, and then all these weird films, it's like,
Yeah, I bet he didn't have that in his lobby.
No, this was in his personal suite here. Yeah, so really strange. But yeah, so I've read a lot about the different ghosts in Chattanooga, and Chattanooga is a really fascinating place, along with the underground and the history of the floods in the 1800s. But also the bridge, Walnut Street Bridge, where I guess somebody was hung off that bridge.
Ed Johnson, yeah. It's actually it's a really famous case. It was the beginning of federalism. One of the lawyers here in town wrote a book on it called Contempt of Court, because it's the only time ever, I think still up to this day, that the Supreme Court actually tried a criminal case. They held the sheriff here in contempt because basically what he did was wander off and left one jailer who was easily overcome for when he knew there was a mob of 50 coming to break Ed Johnson out of jail and take him down to the bridge and hang him. He wound up being hung twice and shot 50 times.
Oh my God.
And he was innocent. So.
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The victim in the case, it was supposed to be a woman who, Nevada Taylor, said she got raped in the Forest Hill Cemetery by a black man, but she said she could not identify. She could not say that was him. She didn't ever see her attack her, but he happened to be a black man who was in the area at the time, and so must be him. And that's how it came about. And then the newspapers here really stirred up a lot of public sentiment against him. So that's how they got the crowd all riled up.
Yeah. So have you been on any of the shows like Ghost Hunter Adventures or Ghost Adventures, anything like that?
I have not. We are virtually certain that one of those guys, the main one in one of the shows, came on our tour before under an assumed name, because both me and my guide, when he came up, we both kind of looked at each other. We both thought that was him. And he was asking questions that were consistent with what somebody like that would ask. And then we found out later that they were in town at the time, like investigating Hale's Bar. So we think they've come on, but not under that name. But we haven't, because we're a commercial tour, those kind of shows don't really come do shows on us, whether they may just come along for fun.
Right. So is that Baggins? Is that his last name?
This was the other show, not Ghost Adventures, but Ghost Hunters, the bald guy, and I know his name, and it's just, of course, escaping me now that we're doing this podcast. But Jason Hawes, that's it. We thought he came along on the tour. Yeah, it sure looked like him.
Yeah, Jason Hawes. So one of the things that I find really interesting, like some of those shows, like really, you can tell there's a creep factor, right? There's definitely something going on there that's not normal. But then there's other shows, like I talked about the guy's last name is Baggins, and he tends to like over dramatize everything, and everything's like this huge production. And I think that kills like the whole mystique and the whole, I guess, magnetism to ghost hunting.
I was talking to somebody actually on the tour last night about that, because one of my guys used to say, because I never really watched Ghost Adventures that much, I heard about it a lot, and he'd say, well, Zach would be sitting there and he'd be holding a K2 meter or an EMF detector, and he'd be shaking because he was so scared and it'd be going off. Well, you shake those and they go off, and that's what we're talking about. Why, when you have so much real stuff, do you fake it? But I know why they did it. It's because if you are on demand, that you got to come up with an hour's worth of film every week. Ghosts don't operate on command. You can't do that. So I'm sure that's why some of them fake it. But yeah, it does take some away. That's what, we've had people before that have asked us, hey, can you guarantee we get ghost pictures? No, we can't. There are some tours that will. And I tell them every time, any of those tours that say they guarantee ghost pictures will tell you, oh, but you have to use a digital camera and you have to use a flash. And all they're doing is taking you past someplace dusty, because reflections on dust look like orbs. And all you'll ever see on their website is orbs. Whereas if you look at our website, we have faces and figures and, lots of other things. So
yeah, out of all the ghost hunting tours and all the ghost tours I've seen, your website is fantastic, by the way.
Thank you so much.
It looks like that you guys have some legitimate stories to tell. And that's why I wanted to have you on, is because I've seen a lot of these ghost tours. I've been on a lot of ghost tours. I have like an affection towards the paranormal. But a lot of them I've been really disappointed, because, they take you to a place and they kind of build it up, and then you get there and it's like, but there's a lot of history here. There's a ton of history in Chattanooga. Right. Where's another hot spot that you like to take people?
Pretty much, we've talked about Underground Chattanooga, which we did not know actually that the stop that we go to for Underground Chattanooga, we didn't know for the first 4 years that it used to be an Undertaker's, which explains why it's such an actively haunted spot. And it's very close to where you live.
Really?
Yeah. The old sanatorium, we have had tons of people getting ghost pictures on there in about the past 3 years. We've been going there for about 4. And so for about 3 years, we've been getting some really cool ghost pictures there. And one of them that I was super excited about, I can't remember if I sent you any of the stuff before or not, but it was, this lady had taken a series of 3 photos through the glass inside the sanatorium, which is condemned. So there's no way anybody can get inside. And it's very clearly someone in a doctor's coat that shows them from the back, like walking through a doorway. I put them together in an animation, and, you can see it really easily. And there's no way anybody could have been inside there. But we, like I said, we get a ton of ghost photos there. For a while, we got, still occasionally, got brides there, and we're like, why in the world are we getting brides showing up at the sanatorium? Well, come to find out, when one of my guides did some research, it was surrounded in the old days by 3 churches. So that would be why. Of course, our ghost hunt, where we actually use all the equipment, that goes through UTC's campus down to Citizen Cemetery. And that one, we love that one. I think we've been doing that since 2011, at least twice a week for all that time. I think I can count on one hand the number of times that we didn't have anything happen and still have some fingers left over. So awesome. It's been real active. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check out the tours for sure. One of the things that I do like about Chattanooga is it seems like everywhere you turn, there's a story. And I know that on the ghost tour, you guys stop in West Village, which is right outside my back window. At the corner by the arts, there's like an arts center. What is that stop about?
Where the country club is, the
private club.
Right.
The private club.
Right, the private club. There used to be, there's a story from the old building that was there and the new building that was there. There was a newspaper account that I'd run across about, a party that was going on in the next door to the doctor's building, and everybody there saw like first one ghost that was holding up a knife that blood was dripping from, and then a couple of ghosts, and then I think later on there was another time where they saw some ghosts chasing each other around, which we think is actually from the current building. So.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. And I've also had along the tour, that's one place where we've had people tell us their personal stories on more than one occasion as well. So. Really?
Yeah, that private club is literally just right across the street from the McClellan.
Yep. That's why.
So I was out walking, so I like to take walks. Like
Mountain City Club, that's the name of it.
Yes. I like to take walks after dark, like 10:30, when the streets are desolate. There's nobody there. It's really quiet, and I like to take photos. And I thought that I sent you the photo with the blue lights, the reflection of the lights hanging in the alley. Right.
That was really cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was a really cool effect. But what was funny was after we went downstairs and went through the basement and all this stuff, and went to the attic and went to the 12th floor and revisited all these places in the building that were supposedly active or whatever. It was really strange because my neighbor and I heard the same thing the same night. I had hung the photos, these portraits in my apartment, and I'd taken them out of the storage, brought them up here, and then I took some other things from the basement that are antiques that have been down there since the building's been here, basically. And I took them up. And about 1 o'clock in the morning, there was all kinds of banging around in the hallway, and there's only 7 units on each floor. So I go to the peephole and I open the peephole. There's nothing there, like literally nothing there. And I kept hearing something hit the door. And so I was about to turn and go back to my bedroom, and right as I did, something hit the door again. So I opened up the peephole. There's still nothing there. And so my next door neighbor came over the next morning and said, "Hey, did you hear all that commotion in the hallway? It sounded like people were whispering and banging stuff around." I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So it woke me up. He goes, "I looked out my peephole and there's nothing there. It's so weird." And I guess the manager, she said, "Yeah, people have noticed that on your floor and the ninth floor. I'm not really sure what that's all about, but they're just here."
We hear those kind of reports a lot, of that exact sort of thing happening. So yeah, I think that's what you've got, some residual guests there. So yeah.
Have you heard anything about the McClellan building before?
Back when I first came up with the tour in 2007 and wrote our original tour script, which, we use something different right now. I remember that I had something, I was thinking it was about the James building, which is right next door. And I can't remember exactly what it is, but I'll look it up and I'll send it to you. So, cool. But yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest one was the Hispanic worker that got killed on the ninth floor. And what's really sad is he was a subcontractor, and the guy he was contracted to, the money that his family was supposed to get for the insurance, he took and left town, stole it.
Oh God, how awful! That's really sad.
His son was left with nothing.
Now the Tivoli over there, very close to you, has a ghost as well that likes to watch some of the shows over there. So maybe he's just coming over, having some partying at your house, and when he's done.
Well, you know that the two buildings are connected, right?
I do.
Yeah. So yeah, it's the Tivoli's really interesting. I walk by there at night and look in the windows and stuff, and it's a really cool building. Really nice.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's gorgeous inside. The little jewel box. It was like only the 4th or 5th place in the country that had air conditioning. So when that happened, it was a really popular place back then in the summertime. Yeah. That's I think they called it the jewel box of the South or whatever. So
very cool. So out of all your ghostly experiences and interactions, what would you say was the one that shocked you and made you the most fearful?
Well, it was something that happened at the exact same time on 2 different ghost hunts that were a mile apart. And this scared the crap out of me so bad that I said, if this happens again, we are never doing this hunt again. I almost ended the hunts right then, and I decided to give them more time. But it happened on a Good Friday, which of all the days of the year that something bad would be about in the world, Good Friday would be it. And on both the hunts, I had my guides call me within a few minutes of each other, telling me this. One of our guests felt something press on their forehead, and then they got really hot and really red and felt really, really sick. And that's not just a friendly ghost that does stuff like that. That's something bad. So yeah, when that happened, that is the thing that scared me the most out of all the things that we've had happen. Oh, well, other than you said that you looked through our website, have you looked on our, if you click the Ghostly Encounters button, that takes you to our blog. Have you read through any of the stories there?
I haven't yet. No, not yet.
There's one in there, and I don't tell this story. I'm not going to tell it right now because every time I tell a story, something bad happens. But you'll find it. I put something in our old building 2.5 days before it collapsed. And then the whole rest of the year was just plagued with bad stuff. So yeah, that was really bad too. And so I have a warning for everyone for that one. If you ever see an object and you think, wow, that's a really cool object, let me take it out of this pentagram that it's wrapped in. Don't do it. There's a reason that it's wrapped in that pentagram, and it's to keep something bad in. So just, don't do that.
so that would be similar to like a Divic box, right?
Perhaps. I don't know a whole lot about those boxes, but like I said, this was something I was thinking, this thing would look really cool in my shop, but I don't really want this pentagram because it looks kind of evil here. Will you take it out of this before I buy it? Yeah, not a good idea.
Yeah, it's I was looking on eBay. So Divic boxes are really interesting. Divic boxes basically come from the old world, right? And what they did was they entrapped like bad spirits or demons in these boxes, and they would cover them in wax and twine and all this stuff to keep the demon inside or the spirit inside. They actually sell some on eBay. Like literally, I'm sure that most of them are fakes, but they sell those boxes on eBay.
I've seen that. I've seen actually one of the supposedly legitimate ghost equipment places selling that too. And I thought that was kind of weird. But yeah. You can find anything on eBay. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I think the only ghostly encounter I've ever had, I was about 16 and I had come home from going to the movies with my friends and it was really late. And everybody's asleep. So I go into my room and I'd go to bed. And I got woken up by someone sitting on my bed. I thought my mom had come in. And I, opened my eyes, and my great grandma was sitting on my bed, and I was like, "I've got to be dreaming this. This is crazy." And she was like, "Oh, I just, I've got to go. I've got to go." And I was like, "What?" So confused. Went back to sleep, and I guess about an hour later, my mom came in. She was bawling. She was crying, and she said, our family just called. Your great grandma just died." Mm-hmm. I was like, "Ooh, that's creepy," because I just literally saw her sitting on my bed.
That's another thing that we hear a lot. Sometimes people want to come say goodbye and make sure they're okay.
Yeah, it's really weird. That's the only interaction I had. But we had, so talking about Corpsewood Manor, we had a very similar story in Houston, in the city that I lived in, just south of Houston, called Clear Lake. It was called the Toddville Mansion, and if you ever get a chance. Yeah, if you ever get a chance, look it up on Google. Toddville Mansion was this guy. He had a ton of money. He built like this huge house near our high school, out in the woods by the water. One section was a living quarter, back section was a living quarter, and in between was an atrium with a big pool. And he would go into downtown Houston and find kids that were homeless or find young boys in the Montrose area that liked men or whatever, and he would take them home, but he wouldn't let them leave. And eventually, they went against him because they were homeless and they didn't have anywhere else to go, but they didn't have the option of leaving. So one day he came home from wherever he was at, pulled into the garage, and two of the boys from the house shot and killed him in the garage just so they could get away. And so police went in and did like this whole investigation. And I mean, they just found some horrendous stuff. And then after that, some friends of mine their parents had bought what was left of Toddville Mansion. And we used to have parties and stuff in there and all kinds of stuff, but it's definitely haunted. They've seen Old Man Toddville inside that building. The city destroyed the building, and they put up condos in the same area. And now the people in those condos are starting to experience weird things like windows breaking for no reason. Yeah, it's really strange stuff.
If you go down to, where the Walnut Street Bridge is, there's those condos that are right next to it. There's a little historical marker right there. And they had done the same thing. There was a house there that both Sherman and Grant had stayed in during the Civil War. Historical, right? Now, the city said it had no historical significance and, took the record ball to it, probably because then they could put up something that, pays more taxes. Right. But if you look at the historical marker, it talks about the ghosts there. So, it's kind of interesting when you find historical markers that talk about things like that.
Yeah. So where's the sanatorium in relation to the McClellan building?
It's over. It's a few blocks from there. Come along on the tour, and I'll show you where it is, or just meet me someday, and I'll come take you over to it.
Absolutely.
But if you look on the website, you'll see a lot of the pictures from there on there.
Cool. Absolutely. So if anybody listening wants to join your tour or learn more about what you do, where can they go to get that information?
If they can go to ChattanoogaGhostTours.com. We have a lot of information about the tours there. Plus, it saves people $2 a ticket if they decide to buy tickets online there instead of over the phone.
Awesome.
But, we have a lot of information there. And then there's some links to like the Corpsewood book, as well as my other books, Haunted Chattanooga and the Ghostly Tales of Chattanooga.
Awesome. I will definitely be checking out the tour in person. What nights and what times do you guys do the tours?
We do the tours every night. We generally do one at 8:30, and then we add additional tours, as it goes along. For example, like tonight, I think we have tours going from 8 till 11 o'clock. And the hunts we do on generally Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. We had added some Wednesdays some this month just because, you know, October.
Yeah, very awesome. Well, Amy, it was absolutely a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this, and again, happy anniversary.
Thank you. I'll see you soon for sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
That's awesome.
Cool. Yeah, this town is so interesting. The people in this town, the characters that I run into are just like shocking. Like they all have a story to tell. And she talked about the underground Chattanooga. So for those of you who don't know the area, haven't been here, Chattanooga actually used to be a whole street level, a whole floor level lower. And what happened was in 1800s, the Tennessee River overflowed its banks and flooded the entire town. They had to bring in boats to like get people out. So instead of like building levees or whatever, they built the street up. So there's still what used to be the lobby area and the street level down below the buildings. And so there's like bus stops down there. There's like all kinds of like weird shit. And I got a tour of down there, and to say the least, I mean, it's like creepy as fuck, but it's cool. I'm into that kind of stuff. So
yeah, if you guys get a chance to go to Denver too, they have, so Denver was originally created. Well, no, that's in Estes Park, but in Denver also has an underground city, and there's rumors about the Illuminati, because there actually is like the little triangles or whatever for it. But the underground city was built because yeah, something like that. Yeah. Like, so there's like this whole thing about the Illuminati. And so the underground city like kind of was built, and then they built all the train stations that came up. And so then there's like, they started to build all these walkways. So on parts of Denver, you can still see these, like, they don't look like windows. They look like windows